4 months from a maintenance perspective. So the goal is really to open the dialogue up with the town board, look at some potential dates if they feel it's appropriate to just kind of take it to the next step where they might like to walk the property with us. I will say for the record, the property is challenging in a sense. Not challenging from a visual perspective, not challenging from a construction perspective, but it's part of the park. And this is something that we'll explore further as we get into the properties, because anytime we go and look at properties, we do a very in-search deed and title work. And we have to look to see how that park was donated, if there were federal funds used for the purchase of that park. If there's certain things you can or can't do. There's something called parkland alienation. If there's restrictions, which we believe that there are some covenants on those parcels, there has to be some mechanism in there to release those restrictions. So there's a little lifting involved in this. It's not a slam dunk in the sense that the town has property and they can enter into a lease immediately. And I say immediately, there's still a process for that, obviously, be it a resolution and going down that road. But really the goal tonight is to answer any questions that the board may have, and then to maybe set a date or two for just a general site walk to the area, just to kind of give the board the opportunity to get an understanding of what we're talking about.
Right. Anybody have any questions?
Would that tower host public service radios as well?
Absolutely. As part of all of our towers, we design them structurally, not only for the 4 carriers that are active. When I say active, the 4 carriers that everybody knows, Verizon, Sprint, AT&T, and T-Mobile. But we design our towers to be structurally capable of handling public safety. And what I mean by public safety, fire, police, emergency services.
That area that we're talking about is a vacuum.
Absolutely.
Radio
Right.
signals.
Absolutely.
It's tough, yeah.
That, I'm pleased to hear that would benefit police and fire as well.
And I'll take it one step further. As a matter of public service that Homeland Towers does, whenever I build a tower in an area, we allow public safety on no charge. Now, the only caveat on that is if it's county communications, they've got a budget and funding for the county network. That's a little different. But as far as local fire, police, emergency, highway department, maybe the school system wants to put an antenna for the buses, the highway department, we allow all public safety on in the local sense, no charge, and that's regardless if the tower is on private property or town property. So I'm telling the board, if this doesn't go through and we end up going on private property, you've got my word that we'll certainly allow the town on no charge. And when I say no charge, space within the compound and on the tower itself. Obviously, you'd be responsible for your own installation and utilities that you consume at the site. But yes, doing this 21 years and what's occurred over the past dozen years with certain incidents, school incidents and so forth, public safety is critical. And we're finding that whenever we come into an area, we're really joined at the hip with public safety. They want it, they need it, and they deserve it.
Very good.
And you would make if this forest were an area that were chosen and this moved forward, what would the tower look like?
So that's a question a lot of people ask me up front. What's it going to look like? What's the height of it? And it's kind of, I don't have a crystal ball in front of me. The best way to answer that is to say, as we go through the process, we work with the carrier that is committed to the site. And they have to justify the height and the need for it. Let's just hypothetically take Verizon. I cannot come to an area and build a tower because as a developer, I don't run a network. I don't know what height I need. The carriers have to justify it. And there's a process. You assume that trees are roughly 70 feet in height. You want to be able to design a tower to be above the trees, and you want to design a tower to be co-locatable, meaning it can handle 4 carriers in public safety. And each carrier, so they don't interfere with each other, has to have separation of their antennas. So you look at 4 carriers, 10-foot separation, that's 40 feet. So you can kind of start doing the math to say, well, the minimum height we might need is roughly 110, 120, but the carriers might need more. And that's all based on their propagation. It's all based on town code. And it's an interesting scenario because it's the town of Unionvale's property in the town of Beekman. I just did a tower over in Polquay, Beekman. I built a 125-foot stealth monopine. People may or may not be aware of it. Verizon's on the tower. They're not turned up right now, but they're installed. and that tower was 125. Town code allows 150, I believe. I believe your own wireless regs allow 150. Now, our goal is not to build the tallest structure that we can. It's got to be at least minimum height to provide the coverage for a carrier. So I can't answer that question.
You could say what it's going to look like.
Well, not even that in that
No?
sense. The town has the ultimate say on what it's going to look like. And we
Oh,
don't
good.
know the zoning process per se, because this is a unique situation. This could potentially go the route of being vetted through the town of Beekman Planning Board, because it's in their jurisdiction. It could potentially go through the route of what's called the Monroe Balancing Test, where the town of Unionville wants to control, this town board, control their own town property that they own. And you have the decision to do that. This past Monday, I just received a Monroe approval resolution from the town of Lewisboro, New York, on town property in the town of Lewisboro. And the supervisor there, Peter Parsons, and his town board decided that they did not want to put this application before the Planning and Zoning Board. They controlled the town property, and they did the Monroe Balancing Test. And that's still a litmus test where you have to go through the whole seeker process and the whole visuals and everything as if you're going through a normal process, but the town can control the destiny. And this is, if we go down the road, something that, Attorney Bastoni and I can talk further about potential zoning procedures or avenues and so forth.
I have another question, but
If you want to see what the tower looks like, go see Hogan's Tower, the one he's talking about at 216. I'm sure we could walk you in.
yeah.
Yes.
Then I want to talk about Unionwell Connor. When they originally donated this property and tried to really think of all the possibilities of making it other than a nature preserve,
Sure.
this was a technology unknown to them.
Our preliminary research on the deed was, I think it was maybe donated or gifted for a dower back in maybe '71. And there's some restrictions on there to perpetual recreational use, no motorized vehicles, snowmobiles only.
This tower, then, is that what you're saying?
I'm sorry?
You're going to let us climb this tower.
It's recreational.
Not me.
There we go.
Yes.
It's a new camp activity.
All right, so technology moves in, and here we get a brand new technology for Tower Park, Tower Forest. And what happens when technology jumps still further?
Sure.
Will you people take this tower down?
Sure. Good question. I get that question a lot.
Or will you grow a whole lot of other towers?
Yeah, typically during an approval resolution, you have criteria to meet, obviously. If the tower is defunct, the onus is on the tower developer to take it down. Now, some people say, Ray, what if Homeland Towers is not around in 20, 30, 40 years if this technology were to become defunct? We post removal bonds all the time, so the money is set aside for future use to dismantle that tower. I would say in our lifetime, there's no indication that these towers are going away anytime soon. They're needed. And everybody, you hear different technologies out there called DAS, which is distributed antenna systems, or small cells. Those are the type of technology when you have a very tightly concentrated area of urban development, like a Nantucket Island, where you can do a DAS system stringing up smaller antenna nodes on telephone poles. When you have an area like Dutchess County and Route 55 and the surrounding area, and because of the terrain and topography, you can't do that here. And that's been proven over and over, obviously, just for the mere fact that we're going like gangbusters on building these sites. There's no end in sight for us as a developer.
So I have a kind of a financial question.
Sure.
Since this is a long process and we're very interested in what the residents have to say about it and how they feel about it, I also know that revenue is good for our park. And if this ended up happening, we could dictate in the contract, this is a question, can we make sure that all the money goes back to take care of the park?
So that's something that you can do internally with the town. I do deals all the time where the town will put it into the general fund. The one I just did in Lewisboro, they're earmarking specific funds for the community house and a cemetery. So that's really your discretion.
So we can make that call.
You can make that decision
So
internally.
what are the chances that you go from one carrier to 4 carriers? Does that happen around here? Is it-
So Verizon and AT&T and T-Mobile are the most active. Sprint, ever since they merged with Nextel back in 2004, they've really been silent and vacant. However, They're just starting to come out of the ashes. As a matter of fact, on Ruth Hogan's tower, we have Verizon on that tower right now, and Sprint is in the midst of signing a lease with us to be the second set of antennas over there. And I think it's just a matter of time before AT&T comes to that tower, and then eventually T-Mobile. The tower that I'm doing at the Pawling Mountain Club at 124 Penny Road, during the zoning process, AT&T was my anchor tenant. So once that tower is built, AT&T will be on it. Our goal as a developer is to get all 4 customers on it. If I have one carrier, I lose money on it all day long. It's not a money maker. By the time I spend rents on my landlord, the ground rent, and by the time the money I spend on taking that site through the zoning process, all my A&Es, my architectural engineering, my visuals, I'm probably putting in about $600,000 into the ground at the end of the day. So our goal is to get 4 carriers on it. And anybody that wants to co-locate, we make the space available to them, obviously.
All right. Hey, does anybody else have a question?
Yeah, public service, radio, for example. I own property in Sullivan County, and the public service, the local radio station, which carries a lot of NPR stuff, was being kicked off the tower because there was just too much business on the tower.
Sure.
So would this be something that could possibly, if you had something in the area?
We could take a look at that. I know there's times that radio doesn't, AM, FM doesn't play well on cell towers, but it doesn't mean to say it can't happen. You need to detune it so there's no interference. Certainly down the road, if the tower is constructed, it's kind of a different animal than emergency services. We would look to see what their spec is. If they have a very small antenna and they just need one up there, I wouldn't see it being an issue, but I don't want to kind of speak for the future, obviously, but we would certainly address that.
Because Universal Road is dead for NPR.
Yeah, there used to be a Nextel tower that was taken down on, I believe it was Brusgold Road. Nobody knew about it.
I'm sorry, Hickman Road.
Okay.
So there's something on Brusgold Road?
I want to say it's the road that pops out over in Dover. What's that road that...
Pleasant Ridge.
Pleasant Ridge, thank
Yeah.
you. There used to be a Nextel tower on Pleasant Ridge Road.
Yeah.
And I know the radio station had an antenna there, and that tower was being taken down. Wasn't serving much. It was kind of, we always scratched our heads in the industry, like, why was that tower ever built? It's in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And I know that,
No.
yeah, so it was dismantled.
Okay. I got a question.
Sure.
These towers, when you put them in, I assume they get an assessed value for tax purposes?
They do.
Roughly what would you think is the...
So our typical average tax bill that we pay, so if I'm dealing with a private landlord, and let's say the property owner's taxes are $10,000 a year, and I build my tower in a town, whatever town, Unionville or Beekman assesses taxes on me, I'm responsible for the difference in paying taxes. Now, to answer your question, what I think you're asking is what is a typical tax revenue generated to a town from these towers?
No, I'm curious what
The assessed
the
value.
assessed value.
Okay. So your assessor can assess it in different ways. They can look at the income approach, they can look at the market approach, they can look at the cost approach. I will tell you, on average, we pay tax bills throughout New York and Connecticut. They average around $6,000, $7,000 that we pay to a municipality that taxes the tower itself.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Great, Ray. Does anybody have any other questions?
That's why I asked, yeah. Really, the school district.
Now, when you were talking about those taxes, does that include county and school? Because our school taxes are very high here.
Yeah. Now, I know, again, I can't speak how every county does it differently. Certainly in Connecticut, it's different as well. But on average, we're paying $6,000, $7,000 a year. Total.
Total.
Yep.
Okay. Ray, what we talking
Are you
about?
looking to try and set some dates tonight for a site
No, we have
visit, or-
I have a couple of dates already.
Oh,
I'm going to email it to the board and then let Ray know which one works to everybody, right? We're going to stick with those two?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
He's gave me a couple of dates tomorrow morning. I'll email them to you all and pick which one. We'll try to get everybody on the same one.
And
It'll
I'll-
be after,
yeah.
after 4-ish.
And Supervisor, I'll extend to the board members, if somebody has a conflict in their schedule, I'm so active in the area. If you want to ever call me up and say, Ray, I couldn't make the site visit on the property, but can you meet me on this particular time and day? I'm very accommodating. I'm at calling quite a bit with the tower and the construction, very active throughout the area, so I'm constantly cutting through 55.
That's great, thank you very much.
No, thank you.
While we have his attention, I'd like to encourage you to look at our Burbank area, because it's the same situation over there, and we have quite a few residents in that little hamlet that have virtually no cell service.
Very familiar with the 82 corridor. I will tell you that I am currently in zoning with the town of LaGrange for a site that is probably not going to afford coverage to that area. I'm zoning a tower right now on Rossway Road. It's really for the Taconic because it's such a dead area when you come down that hill.
I know what you're talking about.
However, and I've had some preliminary conversations with Betsy, is that it's an area that has my attention because when you go 82, you have a tower on the hilltop there at 82 and 55. It does not get up 82. When you kind of make the bend of where Sky Acres Airport is up there, you lose all coverage.
Right.
When I say all coverage, it's Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, and Sprint. It's a dead area.
Yeah.
So it's an area that I will tell you that as a developer, I'm looking at. I'm aware of it. I've actually reached out to landlords. I haven't come across any town property. If you know of anything, Stephen?
Fire department's pretty close.
Yeah, but they have very little property.
Yeah, yeah.
Godfrey Park.
Yeah, back behind Godfrey.
Yeah, Godfrey Park. was on
Godfrey
there.
Park,
yeah,
you know
that's
how
true.
far
Yeah.
We were just talking.
Okay.
Dave just mentioned that.
Unless you make the Rossway one 150 feet, maybe that would help.
It's
Go look at the back of that park.
I'll look at it. Godfrey Park?
Yeah.
Yeah, we
not
went
very
there.
high, though.
I know the park. We took pictures from Godfrey for our Rossway Tower as part of our visual assessment, so.
we'd
But yeah,
love
more than happy to
be
take a
able
look
get
at
some
it.
service for our residents in that area.
Yeah, it's a tough area.
And you know,
Unfortunately,
we talked about the fountains, the poor thing, you go through there and that's all dead, but there's nothing there.
it's, when you get to that, there's some areas, I hate to say it, there's still so many large coverage gaps out there, and the carriers, they want to invest their money where they know they're going to get a return from the
sure.
consumer, obviously, and I wish I can put towers everywhere that need coverage, but it's a matter of economics, obviously, but the 82 corridor going up to Burbank is certainly an
aware
area
of it, at
that
least.
has our attention. Yeah.
Good. Great, thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
the
you very
opportunity
much
to be
for
here,
coming.
appreciate it. I have the two, I have them. Yes, thank you very much, though, appreciate it.
All right, so I'll email the board tomorrow with the dates that we discussed, and then
Absolutely,
I'll CC you on that so you can see, and then we'll solidify it, okay?
wonderful,
And Jeff? should
Wonderful.
come too?
Yeah, I'd like to.
Good.
okay, thank you
Great.
for your time,
All
I
right,
appreciate it.
Thank you very much for
Thank you,
coming.
thank
We
you.
appreciate your interest. Okay, we're going to move on to Town Supervisor's Report. I wanted to go through a couple things with everybody tonight. One is the cash flow report. You know, we're getting at the end of the summer, and we had our largest outflow for expenses that we've had all year due to personnel costs associated with the rec department and summer camps, which is expected, of course. We had $165,318 in cash to come in, and we spent $259,346 going out. That being said, we're still at 103% of our budgeted income goal, so we're a little bit above our income goals, and we're at 82% of our expenditure goals, so we're underspending. We still have 3% over goal for our over budget for our income, so our percentages are still looking good, and we're going to encourage everybody to be very careful with expenses between now and the end of the year, because the revenue potential is less. I wanted to make sure that the board was aware of the fact that we have gotten our escrow process up and running, as we talked about early in the year. And tonight, when we voted at the end of the meeting, I wanted to show you that we've had our first official transfer, which is nice because, and we're going to start showing regular reports, but this will just show you, we transferred money from the general fund into the escrow account that I wanted to mention to you.
Electronically?
Yes, we did.
Good.
And this shows you what we've collected. There was a little bit of money in that account, and we were still trying to recreate where it all went before, because you know how things were commingled and they weren't tracking it. So this is what we've collected so far this year, and we had a little over $8,000 transferred to the general fund. And we want to do this expeditiously, as you all know, because when the applicant's finished and they've gone on, any remaining funds, we want to give them back.
Yeah.
So we're staying on top of it, and the first official one happened. Thought you'd be pleased about that, and we'll track that, and whenever there's a transfer, I'll let you know, and we'll show you documentation. It's just good to stay on top of. It's good for you, good for us. Let's see. I also wanted to say that our biggest receipts this year were from the Recreation Department this month. Sorry, I'm talking about July, actually. We're from the Recreation Department. They've done a great job all summer, over $53,000. We had a sales tax payment from the county for $55,000. Franchise fees and state aid from the DEC for MS4 reimbursements, which was $14,000. And I really want to thank Ryan Skorlik, the executive director of the DC Soil and Water, for staying on top of this reimbursement. We've been waiting for this MS4 reimbursement for 3 years. And between George Cole bugging him and then George Cole telling me to bug him, and Brian saying, I'm after them all the time. And then one day, Brian walked in the front door with a check in hand with a big smile on his face. So he worked really hard. It's hard to get.
Could I ask you write a letter to his superiors and put them in writing?
Yeah. And I've got another thing to thank him for, I'll tell you about. Anyway, so that was a welcome add to our cash. And you've got the other numbers right here to take a look at. I also wanted to give you an update on the Furnace Pond Dam. Now, this is kind of an important subject here. As you all know, I haven't been around that long. I think that this problem with the dam, or this unsolved issue with the dam, has been going on for 15 years or 20 years.
More than that.
It's been going on for a long time.
Probably since it was built.
Probably since the 1800s.
Yeah.
Actually, I went back to one of the historical records, and it said that the dam in the 1800s was not built so well. So we have had ongoing issues with that beautiful dam. Anyway, we talk to people, and I've been working, Jake and I had a conference call with there he is. Jake and I have had conference calls with the engineers that the town had chosen several years ago to work on this. And I think where Jake and I got to was the fact that the town, actually, we got a new bill, and I was a little shocked, a $9,800 bill from an engineering firm that we've had since 2004, and we agreed to pay them $100,000. And I'm looking, I'm going, what did they do? Nothing, and they sent us this bill. So here's the bottom line. The bottom line is we've been given 4 choices by the DEC, because I've been talking to them, talking to this engineering firm. The 4 choices are this. We got lowered. Our rating got lowered from an A down to a B, because Beekman had a couple of houses that got to be built down below the dam, and they had...
Actually, they were already in existence, but they put
in a
new entrance, basement entrance.
Basement. So our rating went down from an A to a B, because should they flood,
Yeah, they're more susceptible.
Well, when your rating goes down, instead of you just having to adhere to the 100-year storm standards, when your rating goes from A to B, you have to adhere to 150% of the 100-year storm standards. Your costs go up astronomically. So the 4 choices the DEC gave us, and I know some of you are interested in this because you've been saying, what are we going to do about this dam? 1, take it down. 2, reinforce it, provide an extra spillway. 3, replace it. 4, lower the pond by notching the dam. So Jake and I were getting frustrated because we weren't getting feedback from this engineering firm. So I talked to the DEC. I finally got the engineer, and I said, okay, these are the 4 choices we were given. I'm not really sure which way to go because they're all incredibly expensive. And we need your advice. We've been paying this firm, apparently. We don't have a plan. We need a plan. And he said, well, the truth is, your town can probably not afford any of the 4 choices we gave you.
Right.
And
This is who speaking?
The DEC.
Okay.
And he said, you can't afford what we're telling you you have to do. And I said, I think that's why nothing's happened for so long. So could you give us a plan? And he said, I think your plan should be, we're going to get you from a B back to an A so that your standards are reasonable instead of 150%. And he said, and I'll work with your engineering firm. And he said, but I want you to come to Albany. We're going to sit down and we're going to hash this out until we get it solved. And I said, great. At least we'll walk out of there with a plan. So I'm supposed to call them soon and set up that meeting. I just got that email today. It's going to be expensive. It's got to go on our list, but at least we'll have something from them, and we'll have a plan, even if it takes several years. So I thought it was amazing.
And the engineers will go with you?
The engineers are coming, and the engineer spoke with the DEC today, and then he wrote me and said, we have a date, or we have a meeting plan. You need to be there. But what was great is that I noticed, and I think Jake was surprised, I don't want to speak for Jake, there a discernible difference in the fact that this man said he's been shoving 4 options out at us for years, and then all of a sudden he says, the truth is you can't afford any of
Because
those.
they weren't realistic.
So anyway, somebody's moved,
Right.
I don't know, it's the headlines telling them people are having trouble meeting
Yeah.
these
Could
high
I-
standards. I don't know what it is, but
Could I ask Jeff a question in this regard?
you could try.
I may not
Okay.
be able to answer.
Damn
The
it.
town is located in the town of Beekman. We own it, okay? But it's because of their permit to a homeowner, allowing them to have a ground level entrance and exit for basement living space, that created the rating to change significantly on the dam. Could we take any legal action against the town of Beekman to address that?
I wouldn't think so.
Okay, all right.
I will check into that if you'd like me to, but my first impression is.
All right, I'll take your first impression.
You know what, though, we could probably not take any legal action, but why don't we just politely ask them to indemnify us against anything that might happen? Check on it.
If you want me to, I will. That's your
I mean,
decision.
no, I don't know that that's a decision, but I think that's getting us to the same place.
Well-
Just indemnify us. I don't know that we want to fight with them, but
That might be a harder thing for them to agree to than changing the permission that they
Yeah.
gave.
well, we'll see what the DEC says, and then we'll go from there. At least we'll have some,
All right.
possibly some numbers attached, and that might help us in our decision making.
Could you keep me in the loop on this? Because if possible, I'd like to go
Wanna
to
go?
that meeting as
Yeah.
well, yeah.
Absolutely. That would be great. Okay.
There is one other fifth choice.
What's the fifth?
Do nothing, and as time goes on, the dam is leaking more and more, and that's going to allow the lake to drain naturally down to a low enough level that the dam is ineffective. That's basically what's happening. If you go down there, there's more and more water coming out through the dam instead of over the dam.
But if there's still the pond water, the pond's still there.
Well, the concern is a catastrophic failure.
I know that, but it's more likely it's going to do what it's doing. Gradually, more and more water will go below the spillway, lowering the lake naturally down to a more manageable level. That's why the DEC hasn't been really that stringent on us, because of the way it's built.
Do we want to take that risk? I mean, I don't know. I think we ought to hear them out and find
No,
out. what it
yeah, I
is.
think we should at least.
Oh, I'm not saying don't go to them, but I'm just saying that's what they're not telling you, but that's also part of the reality of the
I
situation.
think they're just assuming that's been our strategy for 25 years.
Maybe.
That's been-
Maybe.
So
So-
can I ask, like, how do they suggest, if we're now at a B, we go back to an A? We have that property owner sell the house and close up that.
I don't know. There is, that's what we'll find out when we're there. 'Cause, that's
Or
what
maybe
it's gonna tell us.
put some
At
kind
one
of,
point, we suggested, we'll buy those 3 houses and let them flood, because it would probably cost less than repairing
I think it's only
the
one
dam.
that's an issue. Maybe there's
I think
a,
there's 2.
maybe they would put up some kind of a barrier between the stream and that house.
But we'll see. I mean, I think
Yeah.
we need
Okay.
to get the facts. We need to hear them out, and we can
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
go from there. But it is interesting, and, if it does flood and there's a catastrophe, it's not good. So, the next topic for me is workers' compensation rates. We're going to have some budget pressures, I will say, because we have a meeting on Monday about the workers' comp, and
Good idea.
it is, I know it's going up, but they're not going to tell me until they get here on Monday. So workers' comp rates are going up.
I think health insurance is going up like 12.5%.
Yeah, our employees' health insurance rates are up 12%. We've already started reviewing all of that, and we're going to lay out recommendations for the board in September with the pricing, the actual pricing. So that's coming up, but both of those are obviously moving in the wrong direction. I attended this TAP CMAC training in Poughkeepsie in July, and I'm just mentioning it because these governmental programs make me laugh. TAP CMAC, Transportation Alternatives Program, and CMAC is Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Improvement Program. So, but it basically is a grant program, and the reason I'm mentioning it is because it's really important. They've got some air quality improvement programs and all that, but if we started working early enough, they enhance transportation. We might be able to get that cement bridge. We didn't have time last year. I guess it was in the spring, and somebody called us and said, oh, we talked about it too, John. TAP CMAC is coming up, but you can't do that on dime. You have to plan way ahead and have submit a really good package. There is a chance we might be able to get enough money, this is a matching grant for that cement bridge in the park, which we need.
Right, and we may have to budget the matching amount
These are
in
things
this
we're going to
year's-
have to put in our
in the
discussion.
19 budget, yeah.
Exactly, because we also, I wanted to remind everybody, well, let me just finish the CMAQ portion, pedestrian and bicycle facilities, transit improvements, clean vehicle deployment projects, anything that make, for example, projects that make walking to school routine. You know, there's lots of things in these two grants that are joined, that have, I just, there's,
Walking to school?
well, I know, somebody did
Only
say,
from
Well,
Raleigh Road.
I was gonna say, this, the school does not allow anybody to walk to it.
well, really?
Millbrook
Yeah,
does.
Millbrook
this,
does.
these schools do not allow it.
Okay, well, all I'm saying
I
is,
think in Unionville.
I think there's,
They're gonna walk to
I know, but I'm just saying,
You
that,
can't even
when they
cross
built
the
them, that was the thing, they said, no,
they're having trouble walking to the iron furnace. I mean,
yeah, no one's to walk to the school. So-
Well, I'm mentioning it because they have a whole litany of programs that they want us to think about. And the reason we should think about them, regardless of what they are, is that it takes a long time to prepare the package in hopes of getting a grant. And a couple of people called me on the phone and said, gee, could we do this? And one of them, a lady, did want a walking transportation all around the town where people could ride a bike or walk on a path around the town instead of being forced to drive, just for exercise. So whatever it is, I'm just putting a bug in everybody's ear. Let's think about it early. If you have a great idea, we have to start soon. We worked on the salt storage facility grant. We submitted that on July 27th. We mentioned that in a meeting. You've already heard about it, but I really want to thank Assemblyman Kieran Lawler, who sent a letter in support of us for that grant, and Brian Skorlik again, who assisted our grant writer. I don't know how much time he spent with him on the phone, but he gave him a lot of important information about us and about Unionville and about our salt shed and where it is and why we needed that grant. So both of those gentlemen, if we get that grant, we're gonna have to really invite them over and thank them. So they did a great job. Budget process is as follows. The budget officer, happens to be me, is going to be working with department heads in August. The tentative budget will be given to the town board in September. Town board meetings with department heads will be scheduled after the department heads, after the town board reviews the tentative budget, and then the department heads and the town board will meet in September and in October. In November will be the official public hearing on the budget, as well as the vote on the final budget, which is on November 15th. It's due on the 20th, so we'll definitely vote on the 15th. But what we'd like to mention is, so we've got a plan with department heads and then the board working with department heads in two months. So we've got a lot of interaction planned. And we do have 2 more public hearings for 15 minutes before the September and October board meetings. In case other residents come up and have suggestions, we want to keep the process open and keep hearing them until the vote on November 15th. And that's really it. We're looking forward to your input. That's the end of my report, and I'd now like to turn it over to board member reports. Should I start with you, Mr. McMorris?
Well, I was on vacation, and the only board member report I had was don't lose your keys in Disney World.
What about the solar?
Okay, if you want to go
Yeah,
on the solar,
I think
all
that would be
right.
great.
We always want to hear about that.
Betsy and I have been talking about this, and our next step has to be put out an RFP. We can't go any further without having an idea of who's interested in working on a solar project on the landfill. We got a letter from Harlan Smith, who took a look at our figures for that, and instead of the 577 kilowatts, he came up with a figure of better than, actually 1.1 megawatts. Now, looking at the way that they do it over in Rochester, for each megawatt, they get a $10,000 lease fee for their property.
Really?
He said, you're probably not going to get that because it's on a solar field, but when they were looking into it going on the solar fields, there was no incentive for putting it on solar fields. NYSERDA, huh? Yeah.
Okay.
NYSERDA is now giving an incentive to put it on the landfill, which makes it a little bit more attractive for contractors to put it there.
So what do you want to do for our next steps?
For our next step is really, we have to put in an RFP, put out an RFP. Now, Betsy and I talked about it. NYSERDA has turned around and given us an RFP, template that, she said she and I are willing to, put it out. If you'd like, we could probably have it out next week if you want to review it before we put it out. But this is just finding out who is interested in doing it. We have a list of the people that they sent out the RFPs to over in Rochester. Volca gave us.
We have a list of about 30 companies that want to do business in Dutchess County.
Wow.
And some of whom are professionals at the landfill side.
In addition to the people from Connecticut that have already expressed an interest in doing this. So that's our next project, find out who is actually interested in doing it. In reference to your question, John, at the workshop, who's responsible for if something goes wrong at the landfill? That's something that gets written up in the contract. And again, just like anything else, that.
And typically, who in the contract would be responsible? Typically, in one of those contracts, who would be responsible?
The
landowner or
Mostly the
that would
developer?
That would be a thing where we would develop, that we would come into our contract.
Okay.
I'm anticipating that.
I'm sure it's unlikely, but.
I'm sure it's unlikely too, and I would imagine just like anything else, there's insurance to cover it. I would assume that it would be in the continuation of business plan for the developer, because he doesn't want to have that plan down long. It's
of course,
it's probably in his best interest to come up with an insurance policy so that, okay, this happened, I've got to do it, and I've got to do it fast to get it back online.
Okay. Thank you.
That would be what I would do.
Yeah.
But again, that's something that we would decide in a contract.
Great.
There is no cash outlay on the part of the town on any of this.
That's really good.
Right. But I mean, I think,
Now,
Steve, do you have,
what Mike adding to this is, excuse me, if we're going to go to an RFP, then we have to agree here on what type of program we want to participate in. And that should be written into the RFP. And I don't know that we've had that agreement yet.
no.
My opinion is that we should simply be a landlord. I don't want to be an operator of any type.
Right.
Just lease the land, let them do what they need to do to operate the system, and we get what we get for leasing the land.
Right. And those are the models that we've looked at.
The models that we've looked at, anything is, yes, we're leasing the land. We're the landlord, period. It's their headache. But you have certain ways that you can get this to the advantage of the town. One is by a power purchase agreement that, we're going to do it, and we're going to give you this price for your power for the next 20 years.
But I think that comes after.
That comes after the RFP.
They don't
Right.
know. I think let me go back to what Steve was saying for a second, because I think we're all on the same page with my belief. We don't want to outlay anything. We have land that's not being used. We would like them to come and look at it and then determine for us if the connection to Central Hudson is going to work and what the cost would be for them to fix it. And then if they agree to fix it, then if they like what they see, they'll respond to the RFP, and then we start our analysis. But I think would you say that us being the landlord, pulling a developer in is the only model we talked about that we're interested in? Does everybody?
Right, yeah.
I think we're on the same page.
We just want to sit
Good.
back and collect.
I've never heard that, stated here before, because we've talked about several different options.
Yeah.
And, then we're all on the same
Well,
page.
do you want to talk about that meeting that we
Well, I
had?
was going to mention that when you got to me.
Okay.
But we're here now. Betsy and I met with the mayor of Village of Wappingers and They have a system up and running since 2003, I think he said.
13, 2 years.
2013.
Was that
5
5
years.
years?
5 years. They actually own and operate it though. And they've gained enough power to offset the cost of running their water plant in the village there. It was in the area of
Yeah, they-
$30,000, I think,
Wow.
a year from.
Of course, if they're running it, they're
But
putting
yeah,
in
there's more
expenses and
involved
risk
into
and
it.
everything else.
Yeah, exactly.
They've done that also up in Millerton.
They also took advantage of grants that were available back then
Yeah.
that are no longer
True.
available, so.
They got 50%, he said, from NYSERDA.
Right.
Wow.
Which all that, so what the difference that I've noticed is that all the money's gone, but they're giving us a lot more help.
Right.
Like, they came up with that RFP, the template, so we wouldn't be taking, months and months to do it.
Oh, really?
They're giving us a lot more help, but no money. So the developers should come in and take advantage and pay.
Let them take the risk.
But what, the thing that I thought was interesting about that you'd be interested in also, Dave, is that Mr. Alexander, the mayor, said, after we get the RFPs back, after we start figuring out what would be attractive for us, and after we do all that, we get down to the dollars and cents of the energy, if it's gonna work, then he said, would you please contact us? We might be interested in buying some of your power.
Right.
And having a consortium with them and
Right.
the other, because of other towns. So he's already thrown his hat in,
Right.
which is
Right.
helpful for us.
I mean, this is something I even spoke with you about afterwards, we could combine what we get for the town and the fire district. So that we know what we're gonna be paying for energy for the next 20 years.
Wow.
My only hope is that they will come and assess us and that connectivity to Con Ed, because we're at the end of the line and we're
Right.
farther from the substations, the costs aren't so much that they decide not to do it. I mean, that's the big thing they have to assess. How much is it going to cost us to get those lines, those rural
Sure,
lines up and
yeah.
running? So the next step is, we'd
Put
like to,
out an RFP.
we've got the RFP, it's online in NYSERDA. So what I thought we'd do is we'd fill it out as a draft and we could send that. And then if everybody likes it, because I haven't gone through the whole thing myself yet, so I don't know how much we put in about us other than inviting them to come look. And then we'll just see the response. So we'll send you that draft. Dave and I were going to work at it tomorrow, so that we can email it to you guys. That sound good?
Sounds good.
Still good for 9 a.m.? Okay. All right, anything else? Did you find your key?
No.
Got a new one.
We got a new one.
And don't count on the people for the brown truck overnighting you second key either.
Okay.
Well, you got an extra weekend in Disney World, look at it that way.
At least you made the meeting.
And yeah, that's right. John, did you counsel us?
I just want to mention I was working with the supervisor on the grant for the salt shed.
Yep.
Um,
Thank you, that's
and
great.
Looking the thing over carefully and photographing it, I definitely see a need for it. The design of that one was, was quite old, so it did not have concrete to protect the sides from salt coming out or water getting in and salt water coming out. So we do need it, and it's going to protect the environment up there and make it a lot easier. The newer ones, the trucks can drive right in to load and unload, unlike current setup, we can only use a loader. So I think I hope we get the grant. We certainly need it because that facility's pretty well used up, and it would be a big plus for the highway department.
Great, yeah, that was big, those pictures of it.
Being
Yeah.
able to load the trucks inside is a big environmental improvement, because there's no
Yeah.
spillage then.
Right, and they're out of the, it's usually bad weather, they're loading them anyway.
Right.
So the other thing, I've been doing some preliminary work myself on budget things, so when we
Great.
actually get to it, I'm going to have, a good understanding of what I'm looking for to put my comments forward.
Excellent. We're going to need a lot of good input this year. This will be terrific. Thank you. All right, Councilwoman Kelly?
So you all know that I viewed the webinar with the Community Choice Aggregate, and I will send you out an updated link that I received today, which actually has the question and answer period too, and then they type out the questions and answers, so you
good.
can print those as well. But again, I thought it was really interesting after hearing him present to the town of LaGrange, just that 101 concept and that bulk buying power. I thought it went really well because they talk about how we're using our benchmarking that Dave's already been doing. It's all stuff we've already been doing. Europa's been talking to us about. It's one of those 10, action steps. You don't have to do it, but it can be. So it really fits nicely. I know we're going to be, knee-deep in budgets and everything. But long-range plan, I just want to put a motion out there that we invite him to our December work meeting. Jeff, the man that presents locally to towns, we can adjust that as the date comes closer. But I do think it would benefit us to all be in the same room, asking the same questions. Like, it's great that we all get information and we could watch the webinar, but to all sort of think, how does this fit? Unionville, does this fit?
Okay.
And I think it just fits nicely into all our other discussions, right, of where we're going. Okay. Good idea. Terrific. Okay, anybody else? Oh, we did selected our IT management company, Sullivan Data. Sullivan Data has like 25 different municipalities, like Pleasant Valley right next door, and a bunch of others on their list. I don't have it in front of me, so I'm not going to read it out to you. But they're a top-notch, highly regarded, highly recommended firm. They will be onboarding Unionville to their system. They'll do it after Labor Day. So we will expect, there will be an increased cost there, of course, because we have to follow the comptroller's suggestions, but we're going to be a lot more secure.
Yeah.
We're secure. We're not going to get those crazy Nigerian emails anymore. And we'll all feel safer with them on board.
Yeah, especially good that we're going to be meeting the controller's requirements and not having any problems with audits regarding that stuff.
Which is good. We've got 2 things on deck already. Okay, terrific. Thank you all for your reports. Town clerk report?
Hunting license season is open as of August 1st, so we are selling passes for all the hunters and fishers.
Right back.
I also wanted to update everybody on our veterans in Unionville for the Veterans Parade that's taking place on September 30th. I have heard from a bunch of them. I'm not sure if any of you who had your nominations heard directly from them, but I'll read the names for those who are joining us and participating as our Unionville veterans. Wayne Butler, Dave McMorris, Jim Perch, Stephen Schmoke, Jim Smith, Mike Conger, Rich Corrado, William Meyer, or Bill Meyer, Larry Mattiello, and Peter Bonk. So we'd like to thank all of them and recognize them for their service.
So this is going to be on September 30th.
Yep, and it changed to 1 o'clock. Yeah. So if you are a veteran and you're interested in participating, make sure that you get there between 12:30 and 12:50. Mark Coviello's office has advised us no longer 9 o'clock, so you can sleep.
They switched it.
Yeah.
But and then some of our veterans are going to be riding because they don't. They're and they don't want.
They
have
can't requested military vehicle transportation within the parade, and I know you and I are also transporting any veterans that need transportation to the parade. So we'll accommodate anything.
We'll be on the sidelines cheering them on.
Yes.
Right?
Very nice. Very nice.
Thank you for organizing.
It's a great idea.
That's great. Yeah, it's very nice. I'm just happy for that. Okay, public comments on agenda items.
Ann McCabe, Darren Road. I have 2 questions that probably you're going to deal with, but I just want to make sure that I get the concerns out there. And the first is, in terms of the TV presentation of the town board meetings, I know that money was put into the budget for this year to hire somebody who would be able to do this on a dependable, regular basis. I know there were a lot of discussions about getting volunteers or part-time people, which people did follow through on, and I appreciate that, but nothing seemed to work out. I once again go back to the idea that you have to be transparent as any kind of a governmental agency so that people can then hold you accountable. So the transparency is lacking with no TV. I'm not holding anyone here responsible for the TV not working, but it just isn't, okay? And the second question I have is on the proposed resolution 13, number 2. Does this resolution presuppose that there is now a new job of receiver of taxes, which will become a full-time job in the town, complete with all the benefits thereof? I can't tell from it, all right?
Not at all. It's a question that will be on the ballot, that we may put on the ballot, that will just allow the residents to decide whether they want that position to be there or not.
So it's more like, Steve, should there be a full-time receiver of taxes who is elected, rather than will the receiver of taxes be elected, correct?
I don't know the exact wording yet, but it's put out to the residents to decide whether or not they want a publicly elected tax collector.
Okay. I'm not sure that answers the question.
We're not in a public hearing right now, Mrs. McKay.
It's a question, just a question,
Pick up
Supervisor.
the phone anytime. I've invited you to do that.
I appreciate that you seek my company that way, I really do, but I'm very old, I got a lot of grandchildren, I'm just trying to find an answer to my question.
Pick up the
Is
phone
the assem-
anytime.
I'm here now asking, may I ask?
Well, one question, but this isn't a public hearing. This is a time for you to give your comments and then have a seat. This is, we'll get to that resolution soon and we'll read it. What exactly is your question?
My question is the assumption that there will be a position in the town for tax collector? Or is the question as it reads here that that position will be elected? There is a distinction.
The way that it reads is it will be elected.
So that there is already an assumption that there will be this position.
No, the proposition will be put on the ballot, giving the residents the option of saying, I want to elect the person. They can say yes or no. Yes, I think they should be elected. They can say no, and they won't.
Right, I want to have the position and it should be elected, correct?
No, it says, I'm going to read it right over here. Proposition, shall the receiver of taxes in the town of Unionville be restored
Thank you. Thank you, Dave.
as a public office?
Thank you very much.
Elected by the citizens voting in the general.
That's what I wanted to know. Thanks a lot.
But it's be restored. It's not saying a full-time position.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Any other comments? Comments? Yes.
I have two topics to talk about in my little 3 minutes. So I'm just going to make comments on drones and then talk about the library. So I wanted to put forward some ideas about more specifics about the drone resolution because of people's understanding or misunderstandings about drone uses. For instance, I think it should state specifically that drone operation day or night, drone operating would be more specific because I believe it says that you cannot operate within 5 miles of an airport in the daytime. But with nighttime infrared and lights, I think it should be stated day or night.
Well, this is actually saying that there will be no recreational drone use in either park.
Now,
And if there is any commercial, like for a wedding, if somebody wants that picture from up top, as Dave told us about the packages, the wedding packages, they have to get permission in advance.
when they get permission in advance and you talk to Sky Acres, I want to suggest you also specify who at Sky Acres and who is their backup, and that you get it documented about what they said. So that should be in there. Now, as to commercial use, such as weddings, I can understand that, or any town needs for the park or park events. However, I see the opportunity for drone competitions where people come and show their skills. I also see opportunities for people who come and say, I will spray that hornet's nest that nobody can reach over your house with my drone. And if they want to come to Community Day and have a booth and have a little demonstration, they wouldn't be able to. So I wanted to put in that recreational competitions may eventually come up, and we're a great place to do that as long as it's controlled and permitted.
Thank you.
I'm worried about cameras too. If there's anything you can put in specifically about illegal use of cameras and how to catch people who are doing that to either the residents or the park, I think that would be useful too. I know they have hawks, falcons, eagles, getting drones these days, but to get them away from the airports and where they're located would be very difficult. and you can't find the people who do these things. And I think it's very important, because I know that even for airplanes and helicopters, it's a difficult thing now, and drones will make it worse, but we should be able to have some kind of ramification, protection, and investigation to any of that kind of harassment or illegal photography.
Okay, thank you.
Now,
Well over 3 minutes. We're at
Yes.
3:18 now.
Okay.
so I can't say anything about the library?
You know what?
Time's
At
up.
the end. Comments on town issues, you could come back at the end, okay? Thank you very much. Any other comments on agenda items? No? Okay. Board committee, any council reports? The zoning board of appeals is on there, but they're not here because they've got a big meeting they're working on for tomorrow. But they really wanted, we were going to talk about the escrow policy that the resolution that we're going to reach tonight.
Yeah.
So that was that. Departmental reports, first up would be our park department and Mr. Jake Gosnell. Jake, you sit right here.
Hey guys.
Hello.
How you doing?
So, just real quick, besides the fact that it's really hot and really sticky and raining a lot, the grass is growing like crazy. But a couple of things we have going on, and Betsy was a big part of this too, which is great. Back when the fire suppression system was put into 8 Timar Park Road and the big wall and everything, the caps were removed from the silos. The caps were put back on, but the actual, you have the main dome and then there's another hole in the top. Those have actually been open this whole time. The smaller caps were never reinstalled, and we actually found somebody who's willing to reinstall them. Well, new ones, not the original ones.
Right.
We don't have the original ones anymore. So that'll be good. That'll keep, any more rain,
Birds
snow,
and everything else.
birds, anything like that from going back in. You don't have birds in there before. We've had pigeons. We've actually had hawks after the pigeons in the silos. It's interesting. So that's pretty awesome. I had one more. Oh, Steve had brought up last time the thought of putting solar cells, or not solar cells, photo sensors on the street lamps, which is awesome. I have made some phone calls. It's a super busy season right now, so just waiting for some callbacks and we can get some estimates for that. But yeah, just trying to keep up with things.
Okay,
Lots of
thanks.
good projects.
I know the grass alone is a nightmare these days.
Yeah, the weather's killing me.
It's hard to find time to do it when it's dry and it grows so fast. Forget it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you got it.
Appreciate all your help. Oh, that's under old business. Recreation Department, Jessica Dickinson, hello.
I made a quickie little agenda for you. I'm going to breeze through it, but when you have it in front of you, you'll notice a couple upcoming events. Saturday, in fact, we have our adult volleyball tournament. If anyone wants to come and support the Unionville team, they're pretty good, so they're looking forward to another win. That begins at 10, so just bring your spirit, and it's a potluck, so if you want to bring something to eat too, go for it. We have a couple TGTT weeks coming up. If you don't know what those are, they are the extra camp days after the 8-week camp, so we'll continue with those. A movie night is coming up as well at the end of August. We're going to show Gremlins out in the park, so please come join us. I hope it's not another rainy evening because we've had quite a bit of rain. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. And then moving forward into September, we've got actually a little typo there if you can change it. It's September 3rd is the last day of the pool season. So please make sure to utilize our pool before that comes to an end. And again, we've had so many rainy days that it's been difficult with balancing the weather and the guards and everyone wanting to enjoy the pool, but we will do our best and say a little prayer. The TGTT days continue before the after-school program does. That starts up on September 6th, and a couple more movie nights in September, and then we get to the big event in the park, which is Oktoberfest. So we'll segue into that, and on the next page, actually the last page in your packet, I do want to discuss who you would like to use as the local beer distributor this year. We have two options on the table. It's either Craft Beer, who we used last year, or Duchess Beer Distributors, which we've used in years prior. So I would like to actually support the fact that to use Ted DeAngelo and Dutchess Beer Distributors this year. I have some of their information in the next couple paragraphs with how much they sell the kegs for and a few other perks such as marketing material, promo items, even live radio spots have been thrown into the mix.
That's
and I think
great.
it would be really interesting to spice
Signage and
things
banners?
up. Yeah, so they do, both companies have done some marketing materials for us in the past. And Dutchess Beer was very, generous with what they offered. They made us a really big sign that even East Fishkill Provisions used in front of their location to promote the event. So we all kind of worked together, but they did print up those banners and some large posters and things that we did use. So it's up to you guys. I know that you have your thoughts, and I want to open the comments up if I can to any suggestions of how you guys move forward, really.
What was the company we had last year?
Craft beer, one at the bottom. As long as it's not that one.
I'm gonna have to recommend Dutchess.
Yeah.
On this. We had a phenomenal service from them the year that we used them.
I do agree.
Even when we started running short, they made a special trip on a Sunday.
They certainly did.
And they brought us, more beer.
And they brought the trail early enough so that it all settled down. By the time we started pouring, it wasn't all foam.
I'll make
That's
a
a big
motion that
factor.
we go with Dutchess.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No argument on that one.
Right.
Dutchess Beer Distributors it is.
That's wonderful. Then we can move forward, and I know Teddy is excited to get the ball
Yeah,
rolling.
I actually
and see
ran
what
into
he can-
the two brothers there,
Nice.
and they were excited.
Good, good. And it's nice to have people passionate, to help us and make this event really great, like it will be bigger and better this year, like it always is. So we're very excited to get moving on that. And then lastly, a few more updates. It's not on your agenda, but I want to throw out a big thank you to Ed Cash, who has helped us with the community day planning and lots of other things that we throw him into or he volunteers for. I don't know. But he did a phenomenal job with the T-ball coaching this year, and really took that program the way we had it to another level. And I think those kids can now play in the major leagues.
Wow. He's a good coach.
But I got great feedback, and he was just volunteered his time in excess. So definitely, Ed.
He had a lot of
wherever you
rain days, didn't he?
He did, and he practiced their little booties off. I mean, he
And
extended
he worked
days.
with John Kelly,
Yep,
another
he did.
resident. He had an assistant, I
Dennis
guess.
Spinney as well. And Dennis Spinney.
And Dennis Spinney.
Yep, and
Three
Miss Casey was
residents.
out there a few times. So and Dave even lent a hand and did some beautiful photographs.
Did you do the
at the end
photographs?
of the
That's great.
season, too. So really, it was nice because T-ball is usually a one-off and just something that we do in the mix of all the other things that we do, and so we're a little tired from doing that too. So it was just nice to get a really fresh beat, and I think we
great.
have a nice crowd. So I definitely want to thank him.
Well, also, I think the other thing, getting more residents involved with some of these programs, especially dads that might like to teach T-ball or anything else, and we want volunteers for Oktoberfest, right?
Absolutely.
What do we want them to do, decorate and say hello?
Yeah, on
You
the
going there?
agenda, some decorating, just pre-planning, figuring out maybe some of the promo items that we'll be using, but definitely help the day of the event. So September 3rd, save the date, because we'll need a lot of hands on deck, and if you're not sure how you can use your strengths, we'll find a strength for you. Like pouring, the beer pouring at the taps, I think that would be something that we're looking for volunteers to do. Any decorating, ticket sales, concession sales, anything, because if anybody's ever been there, it's just a day full of lots and lots of commotion in a great way. So if we can channel everyone's positivity and helping hands, that would be fantastic.
So when we ask for volunteers, you want them to call Andrea and leave their name and number with her, and then she'll
That's certainly
invite
fine.
them to a meeting? Is it the September 3rd when you
Yeah,
want
I
them?
mean,
Okay.
I'll fill everybody
doing
in
that?
on,
'Cause
we're
we
going to
always like
meet
to call
often
you.
in September, and those will be open meetings to anyone really.
Great.
And we'll have a nice little core team, so I'll make sure
Wonderful.
you know those dates when I do. But very soon, it will all be happening very soon.
I'll do the under 21 stamping.
Perfect. You're good at that.
I was good at that.
Yep. So thank you to him, Oktoberfest volunteers. And then tomorrow we're looking forward to the fire department come to the last day of camp as a local superhero. And I've been in chat
They're
with
coming?
them.
That's
they
nice.
are coming, and it's just going to be a really nice display of what our town can do, and hopefully spark some curiosity in our kids and even some of our teenagers and stuff. Maybe we'll recruit some volunteers. I don't know. Anything is possible. Lastly is just a little bit of summer camp data for you to look at. I won't go into each piece of it, but just in a nutshell, we really exceeded our numbers in 2018 in not only revenue, but just the bulk of how many people were in fact registered. So,
Did a great job. Very nice.
Congratulations.
Very
Great
impressive.
job.
thank you.
And I heard nothing but good things.
Yeah,
I'm
the
sure
kids
you
are all
guys
happy.
did too.
Yeah.
They're
The
happy.
pool was crowded.
Yeah, and we finished up a great last trip of the season today.
How was that?
It was fantastic.
Good.
A great place. The kids should be sleeping by now. It's about 8:45.
We should too.
It's, do you know where your children are in bed, I hope.
Sleeping. That's great.
But thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. Good job.
Can I go back to Oktoberfest for a
Yes.
second? I'd like to recommend that we keep the beer selection to a minimum. The number of beers that we had last year created a lot of confusion, both on our end and on the customer end. They couldn't decide what they wanted
Right.
a lot of times, and that made the lines get backed up.
Took a lot of time.
And then, you know, we had to make sure we were getting the right one at the right time.
Let's keep it simple.
Yeah.
Simple and good. Yep.
Good idea. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Great suggestion.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Nice summer. Great. Next up is Building Department. George had asked me to let everybody know that, Mr. Kolb, that the online payments are working, so people can go online and process them. So that's up and running, as we discussed. He's got some fee schedule change requests that he wants to talk about. And we were going to have a discussion about the fence request, and then because it got a little more complicated with the part that interacting with the code, and then he sent me code changes that he wanted, and I said, you know, it's a little bit much for this, we need a little more time to assemble that. And I'm keeping all the code suggestion changes that people have, and I told him we'd lump that into a future discussion, but it was the fence permit policy, because it seems having standards for fencing is important, especially if two neighbors are arguing. But to have to charge them to go out and add an additional cost onto it is something that George is grappling with and that we're going to be talking about. So anyway, I think he had a couple more ideas, so we decided to postpone that conversation. Okay, we'll get back to that one. And then also because a lot of it's in the code, yeah. So we want to make whatever we're doing mirror that, or we thought we could we bring this fee schedule down, even though, because that's not mentioned in the code, how much it is. But since he had other changes, we'll talk about it maybe between now and the end of the year. Old business. Jake Gosnell, we were dealing with the handicap parking lot today. I didn't ask you to talk about this, but it sounds like, yeah, if you want to come up, I think we had a good conversation with Tom Harvey today. You want to give just a quick on what's happening, and I'll help you because I had some of the conversation.
So Tom Harvey's been really super helpful, and he's been really on top of getting us, you know, plans and updated plans and communicating with the county, which has been awesome. And there's been a big, long chain of, you know, emails between the county and Tom and Supervisor Moss and myself, and just going back and forth. And, you know, it's been a really good process, and I think we finally have it to the point where it can go out to bid.
Yep, the county approved it today, just today, that we can go out to bid.
Great.
So hopefully that'll keep us on track to be able to get this
because you got a little over
work
2
done
months to get it
before
done.
it gets too cold.
Yeah. So here's and I'm going to talk to Jeff Battistoni after the meeting about our time frame, because there's a part of it, the secret part of it, that we'd like him to look at. But Morris Associates really does a fabulous job of taking a lot of this off our hands. So today, our town clerk, Casey, submitted the required information for the bid in the Poughkeepsie Journal. So that was submitted. And I think Tom talked about having until the 24th. So people could respond, giving them a little time. So, no, actually, it's. I think he wants them to respond before our next board meeting. So I think it'll be like the day or two before that. So they'll get all those back, they're gonna sort them for us, they're gonna organize them by reputation, they're gonna make calls on reputation if they don't know the firms that respond. They take care of a lot of this for us, which is great. So, I mean, it's in the works. Ann Saylor approved it. The only thing I can tell you is there's gonna be 2 big ladder that she wants painted, ladder sidewalks going over. Crosswalks, sorry,
Yeah.
going over from the parking lot.
Yeah.
Over
Which is
to
good
the
for
senior
safety.
center, into the
Yeah.
recreation area. And we agreed to put up a split rail fence that will help funnel people a little bit into the crosswalk, so they're not all taking walks all of, you know.
And then at that point, once we put up the split rail fence, we can also close off that lot, you know, so there's that aspect of it too.
Right.
To
At
keep
night you
people
can
out of
block-
it at night
block access.
and
Yeah.
whatnot, which is nice.
And the split rail will look good. And there's a phase 1 and a phase 2. We'll go over it later because the phase 1, the county's all in on, that's theirs. But there'll be new sidewalks and new handicap parking next to the senior center, so
And
they
there-
don't even have to cross the street.
A really nice part of this too is it's addressed the drainage problem that we have down there. It's-
Oh,
Phase
good.
2. That's in
Yeah, it
phase
has
2,
a-
yeah.
you know, and
Good, that's important.
So that's a really nice thing,
That's great.
so.
So we're pleased, finally, people watching their emails go back and
Very
forth, but
nice.
they're finally,
Yeah, it's finally moving ahead,
Yeah.
which is great.
so we'll keep everybody posted.
Can we ask the attorney to look into the pros and cons of converting that from a public road into a park road or driveway? Because I think,
I think, what about Duncan Road?
well, that's partly through Beekman too.
Well,
But
I mean, I'm just thinking of that
that's
truck
still
that ripped the
public
wires out.
road at this point, isn't it?
Of course.
Yeah, and,
Timer Park Road.
right.
Well, I called the Department of Transportation, and if you have anything to add to this, or if you want to look into it, a couple of months ago, because somebody here had said, what would it take to have that road go private? So I was charged with, anyway, I got in touch with the department, I don't remember what road we were talking about, maybe it was a Ritchie question, I don't know. But I called the Department of Transportation, and the man explained to me that for a town board to take a road private, it takes a resolution, it takes a majority vote, and it's yours, if it's in your town. And he said the only difference is people have to realize that you then own the care of it, which we're taking care of anyway.
We already own.
So, yeah, we could,
Well, I think that would, my problem with this plan is that, and I mean, we're gonna have to move forward with what we have at this point. But my problem with this plan, from the beginning, has been that we've taken the handicap spaces and moved them further away from the building. And the reason.
No, we're moving them closer.
no, remember with the update, when we moved them, they were farther away, none of you liked the plan from last year. And so in the subsequent meeting, we moved them alongside the
they're on
senior
the
center.
side.
They're on the side of
Yeah.
the building, and then they walk on the same side of the entrance. So the building's here, they're gonna park right next
It's
to it.
very close.
And there's gonna be a sidewalk for them to walk right into the senior, so they couldn't be closer. Yeah, you just forgot that one, it's been a while.
And there's also
still a
ones
drop-off,
in the
right?
back.
Yes,
It was
absolutely.
still like that drop-off thing, so theoretically,
Yeah, she
somebody
cut
could
out
drop
two of
off the
them.
person
Yeah.
and then.
She doesn't want any drop-offs between the two crosswalks, so you have to come down further. The senior center, is there one in front of the senior center, or did she knock them out?
There's not, she did
That's
away with
gone.
that one.
She doesn't want it, she just feels
It's
that
further
it's
down.
unsafe, so there's one further.
And that was
down.
because it's a public road, and I think if we made it a private road and restricted, then maybe the concern wouldn't be there.
Yeah, we can do that anytime, apparently, I mean, Jeff can follow up and confirm for us, but apparently if we vote.
Maybe you can look and see if there's any downside to doing that.
Oh, thank you.
But how could it ever be private if it's owned by the town? The town
Well,
is-
not private, but restricted.
Oh.
It would be,
That's
you
a
know,
big difference.
like our driveway here is not a public road.
I know that, it's a driveway, but I'm saying, so in other words, you want to declare it a driveway.
Correct. Because then that takes a
Well-
lot of, I think that takes a lot of concerns away that they had for some of the safety. That road is rarely used by anybody,
Well,
except that are going to the park.
Yes, but there are a lot of people that I've noticed come right through, you know?
Okay.
Like, they will be coming down Duncan, they will turn down Timar Park Road, they'll go through Timar Park Road just to go out.
I don't think that we necessarily want that traffic.
No,
going through the
absolutely,
park.
absolutely.
You know, it's a safety
That's
concern.
why-
That's why we locked up those gates.
Yeah, well, maybe you should lock them up at daytime too.
Well, we can, but
The one on the far end is the one I'm talking about, not the one to get in from up here, but make it a one-way in and out.
yeah.
I don't see that there's a need to have that far end open. It's encouraging through traffic. And I don't know that that's what we want with people crossing the street to go into the park.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So it could be a utility gate or something?
Right, and then fire department would have keys to it.
I would hope so.
And,
Yeah, bolt cutters.
Right.
Well, but I mean, they're big, it's something to study, because I think I've noticed some of the parents that come to camp, Jessica, they drive past those buildings and drop them off at that second split.
well,
road
and the
fence,
concern of safety,
you know?
you know, like 30 seconds more to their travel time, I don't think is asking.
I mean, I will say, the way the drop-off works is, for camp, is people come down the hill, they stop, the child gets out of the...
And that's where the signage is.
Yep, the
for them
child
to
gets
do
out of the
it. Yeah.
vehicle, and then they continue through.
They keep going out the road.
So that way,
Right.
we don't
They're
have...
going
use
effectively one way.
I thought they were going into the parking
No,
lot.
because
No.
we had too many people trying to turn around in the parking lot, and people almost
Yeah.
getting hit by cars.
During the
so
camp
maybe-
season, the signage is for one way to do the
Yeah.
loop. So they come
Well,
in,
they have
drop
that sign
off,
that
and
says
keep
go to
going.
the other way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
At the end,
yeah.
you're right.
Well,
not enter.
suppose we make it a one-way street then.
You can do that. For us, I mean, that's a park road, really. I think it may be
It's-
private.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, we're at the point where we should declare that, rather than have it be a public road.
And all it would take is for us to buy the signs to put them up.
Right.
So, I mean, you know.
And a resolution.
And the resolution,
Yeah.
yeah. If you want to test it for a while and then adjust it, then maybe we do that.
But yeah, then there's a flow. I don't, you know.
Yeah.
Would you like to wait and see how it looks after they finish this?
Yeah,
off?
we'll do that, and I'm just, you know, a bit concerned for the safety of the people crossing
Yeah.
the street there. And that's been my concern from the start of this, you know, was the idea of making those narrow channels rather than full width of where
Right,
they could cross.
you had a good drawing too,
Yeah.
and she liked, you know, she changed it, but
Yeah.
the other thing, she did call me today and say, look, I want you to promise me that you're gonna do phase 2. She said, because there's aspects of phase 1, we've got new sidewalks, we've got handicap parking next to the senior center, we got these two, she said, but then you guys have done all this talking about your phase 2, and Brian Skorlick also came over and looked at our plans and helped us with that too, because Richie was working with us on the culverts and
Right.
how, and the water draining is such a problem. And I assured her we were gonna do phase 2.
Well,
You know what, we'll apply
Maybe
for
there's
another
gonna be
grant.
a phase 2 grant.
Yeah, we'll apply for another grant for phase, to pay for
Not
phase
from her
2.
though, they only do the handicap stuff.
Well.
But maybe she'll, you know, there are others,
Yeah.
but she really wants it to get finished, and I told her that we,
Well, we do too.
yeah, we do too, and that we were.
Tell we live here.
Yeah. So anyway, that was that, but thank you for all your help, and as soon as the bids come back,
Yeah, hopefully we can get going.
yeah, thanks a lot, Jake. Have a good night. Okay, the next one, library contract for 2019. I mean, they had a meeting yesterday, the Mid-Hudson Library System. I think the meeting was their normal meeting, and they were going to be appointing Rebecca Aldrich Smith as the new head. I thought we'd hear from them, so I put it on the agenda, but we haven't heard from them.
But
So
do you know if
there's
they discussed our
No,
response?
I don't know. I was, you know, hadn't heard anything. I emailed
Because
them.
at some point, we've got to move forward to put it on the ballot if we don't get their agreement.
Well, we sent it back the day after our last
I
meeting.
know that, but I'm just saying,
And-
we have to focus on, our next step would be to put it on the ballot.
Right.
If we don't have a valid contract.
But there's there's 4 different libraries that have to read that, so they're probably all scheduling their meetings. Have you heard from anybody? Do you know anything? I haven't heard. Nobody's heard it. So, well, it's in their hands. We did it right away. We'll wait to hear, but I haven't heard it yet. I thought maybe I would, so I had it on the agenda. That's the only reason it's on here. As soon as there is something communicated, I'll make, everybody will
Okay.
hear about it right away. Circle at Clove Road and Brusgal Road, they did not get the plan. Remember, to remind everybody, we don't like the design, we don't like the hill because of people, and I got another email from a man who said he knows it's a problem for Peckham when they come down that hill, and he said, I'm glad to hear that the town wants to do something about it. We're waiting for the plan. I spoke with the head of the DPW. He didn't have it quite ready for this meeting. He's hoping that he'll be able to send it to us so we can discuss it at the next meeting.
Okay.
So,
Well,
remember,
they
it's
did
gonna be
mow it.
an intersection, or it's gonna be a circle. There's pros and cons with both. They're studying all the data, and they're gonna, it's not rocket science, but it's gonna look a lot better. It won't have that mound to send cars shooting if they run into it. It's gonna be it looks horrible, and after all their research, they'll have a backup for their
Yeah.
recommendation. I don't know what it'll be yet.
Well, they did mow it this week. Second time this year.
Carlos is the only one who's over there taking care of that. circle. I don't know, you're the only one.
Flowers are very visible now.
And the grass is growing super fast.
Yeah, so they had to come over, but thank you, actually, thank you. You're the one who shows the circle, that,
Yeah, for years he's been doing the
you've been doing a
flowers.
great job, and you're the one because,
Yeah, but he does it.
yeah, but you must have the green thumb in the fire company.
No.
So, well, looks, thank you. The drones in Time Warner Park, the resolution, Jessica Dickinson had initially approached us about needing language in the facility, in the rental agreement. I met with Larry Mattiello, who he said, I would like to be your unofficial aeronautical safety engineer dedicated to the town, because he's a pilot and he does liability insurance for airports, and he's
He's an instructor also. So.
he really knows his stuff. So anyway, we had a meeting and he helped us write the resolution for the drone policy for what we're gonna do in the park, and then will help us, look at the language for the facility rental. So anyway, he was really instrumental in this, and I wanna thank him as well. And the rest of these are just the grievance board. Robert Taft, as you guys all know, had requested that we go from 5 to 3. And we've already discussed it, so I probably don't have any more. New business tonight was just the cell tower, so now we can proceed to resolutions. Dave, would you like to start with resolution 1818 and read that one?
That's the drone.
Yes.
Okay, whereas Federal Aviation Administration has determined that airspace within a 5-mile radius of any airport is to be controlled by that airport, and whereas Sky Acres Airport, the town of Unionville, must provide authorization in advance for any drone operating within its airspace, and whereas Godfrey Park is located 2.8 miles from Sky Acres Airport, and Time Warner Park, consisting of more expansive land parcels, has some areas which are located within Sky Acres Airport's controlled airspace, and whereas the flying of drones in Time Warner and Godfrey Parks would be inconsistent with the goals of protecting the park's natural amenities and minimizing conflicts between visitor types and encouraging respectfulness among visitors, as described in the 1972 Recreation Management Plan for Time Warner Forest. Therefore, be it resolved that the town board of the town of Unionville prohibits the recreational flying of drones in Time Warner and Godfrey Parks or in the airspace above these parks, but will permit commercial use for one event if a group is renting one of the park facilities and the operator secures permission in advance from Time Warner Park Recreation Department, provides a copy of their FAA certification and evidence of insurance. Required insurance specifics would be provided with the application. Now therefore be it resolved that permission for commercial operators to fly a drone for commercial purposes in Time Warner or Godfrey Parks may be withheld by the Recreation Department if authorization is not given by Sky Acres Airport. There will be no exceptions to this rule. The question of adoption foregoing resolution is duly put to vote on.
Motion, do I have a second?
I'll make a motion.
Make a motion, we accept the
And I will
resolution.
second.
Okay, was there any discussion about it?
Question on whether we should put verbiage in there that this doesn't guarantee permission by any means. In the event that we would reserve the right to refuse. Should that be in the resolution or on the application?
Well, and if the operators, we'll give permission for commercial use for one event if a group is renting one of the park facilities, and if the operator secures permission in advance from Time Warner Park Recreation. Doesn't say when. To me, it says if, so therefore.
We could say no.
We could say no, and Sky Acres can say no at any time if they have a very busy thing. So I think you're right, but that can go in, because this says if, that can go in the rental facility agreement, and we'll make sure that Mr. Battistoni reviews all that for us and buttons it up.
Yeah, I just would like us to have the right to refuse somewhere, whether it needs to be in the resolution. I turn that subject here. In the resolution or in the application.
Okay.
But, you know,
What do
we,
you think, Jeff? Would you, I think because it says if, it feels like we're not guaranteeing anybody anything.
Yeah, I agree, but it says if.
So we could put it in the app,
I think it's
or
fine.
the rental. You think that'd be fine? Okay, and you'll look at that for us. Okay. Good thought. Any other discussion? All those, roll call vote. Andrea?
Supervisor Moss?
Aye.
Councilman Frazier?
aye.
Councilman McMorris?
Aye.
Councilwoman Kelly?
Aye.
Councilman Welsh?
Aye.
Okay, resolution passes. Thank you very much. Resolution 1819.
Want me to do that one?
Mr. Welsh, can you read that one?
The purpose of this resolution is to add a proposition to the election ballot which would enable the town residents to make a choice about the receiver of taxes in the town of Unionville. Whereas the receiver of taxes, also known as tax collector position, as an elected official, was eliminated by a majority town board vote, majority of 3, on May 18, 2017, in favor of transferring all duties to the office of the town clerk. Whereas many residents of the town of Unionville felt the decision to eliminate a position held by an elected official should be decided by a majority vote of the citizens. Whereas it has been confirmed that there are no financial hours of service or performance advantages gained by transferring these duties to the town clerk's office. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board of the town of Unionville intends to give the residents their say by adding the following proposition to the election ballot on November 6, 2018. Proposition: shall the receiver of taxes in the town of Unionville be restored as a public office selected by citizens voting in the general election every 2 years effective 2019. Be it further resolved that if the proposition passes, a candidate for the tax collector, also known as collector of taxes or receiver of taxes position, will be on the ballot in November of 2019. The winner of that election will serve a 2-year term beginning in January 2020 and ending December 31st, 2022, with each successive term running for 2 years. Need a roll call vote.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion?
I have a few things to discuss. I have 2 paragraphs that I'd actually like to be removed because they're very leading and can't possibly be true. They make a lot of assumptions. The second paragraph says, whereas many residents of the town of Unionville, I can't define many, I was on the board, I did approve of eliminating it as an elected position. I didn't hear backlash from email or phone calls to me, so I'm not sure what many is. And then felt the decision, we're making an assumption that they felt the decision to eliminate a position held by an elected official should be decided by a majority vote of the citizens. That's just assuming. And then the second paragraph says, whereas it has been confirmed, I have not seen any confirmation. Actually, I have heard the opposite. I have heard Betsy say how much people have really enjoyed the Saturday hours because it was a work position. The difference of having an elected position, and Edna did a great job for many, many, many years, and we owe her lots of gratitude. No one in the town can tell us, as elected officials, how many hours we have to work. It just is the way it is. So the town
That's not
board.
true for a collector of taxes.
The
Town board can set that, right?
There's 2 things that, I think this is what happened last year also. There was some information that wasn't transferred properly, not everybody knew. The collector of taxes is required to work 3 days a week.
Correct.
In addition to that, the town board is responsible for setting the hours for town hall. So if the town board says we're going to work on Saturday mornings from 9 to 3, you're a town board member, so you know, it's your choice. But a collector of taxes has a responsibility to be here a certain number of hours, minimum of 3 days. And if the town board sets the hours where we wanted to try the Saturday morning hours, she has to be there, or he has to be there. It worked really well this year, and I think we were fortunate that we had somebody who had a very meticulous person who was really good with numbers and really devoted a lot of time to it. But we know that that person can also be elected. And I think from a financial perspective, if you want to go through the 3 things, the hours can be set by the town board, and a good tax collector will meet their obligations of a minimum of 3 days. And we found that actually worked in addition to the Saturday. Now, when we review the numbers, Edna Bonk was paid a little over $7,000. There is no financial gain to eliminating that position. I think that was compared with Beekman, whose tax collector at that time was making $42,000. There's no financial gain here. As a matter of fact, because we added Saturday hours, there was over $9,000 paid. $1,500 of that was Saturdays, so that meant that in effect we ended up spending $7,500. So we spent $500 more on a staff person, so it's really a moot point. There's no financial gain. So I think, you know, just to debunk some of those things, the purpose of this is that there wasn't a big difference between an elected or a staff. If you get the right people in these positions, and we were fortunate that Joan was here, I think the idea behind this is that in talking to a lot of the town residents, they said, I want to say, I want to have the vote. And this is to restore the town residents' the ability to have the vote. They can vote it up, they can vote it down, but I think all the people that we ran into, and I was out of town when that happened last year, and I heard the meeting, and it seemed like a lot of people didn't know what was going on. A lot of people said, I think have shared with all of us, that they would just want to have a say. Can go up or down, and if you can make a case for it going down, people will listen to you, and if you can show that there's not a real big difference, if you get the right people, then it'll go that way.
I would just like to add that I didn't hear much about it when I was here, but in my efforts to campaign door to door, which I did extensively last year, I did hear a lot of residents express that interest that we retain the elected position for that office, rather than just have it part of the town clerk's office.
And I can confirm that as well. I got the same response when I was out campaigning. I don't think that people would necessarily come to you because you had voted the other direction with their support in restoring it. But I did have a number of people remark that they were disappointed that they can't no longer select the tax collector.
So I am in complete agreement of this resolution if those two paragraphs are out. Those two paragraphs make a lot of assumptions. I also really appreciate that you changed the proposition, because I actually had a problem with the first way you wrote the proposition, because historically it was, again, leading and confusing. And as somebody that I vote every year, you know, I want to be able to know what those propositions say. And when I have to study it for 10 minutes before, thinking, is this a double negative? What are they actually asking me?
Point.
I don't want to confuse anyone. I want to just ask them the question. I personally believe one vote, you know, your vote is your voice. So I am wholeheartedly behind that. I just do not like the wording of those two paragraphs. I think if you remove them, it still reads the same way and gets your point across. This town board removed it on this date. Therefore, be it resolved that the town board of Unionville intends to give the residents their say, and the proposition, and then be it resolved. But those two paragraphs, as I read them, I believe are they're just not accurate. They're more
well, you don't know,
commentary.
I think just to be fair, last year when the discussion was held at the town board, the information that was shared was not accurate either. So if when I was out talking to residents, if everyone, I mean 100% of them said, I would have preferred to have a vote. 100% said I was really shocked that was taken away from me. That was many residents, because I spoke to an awful lot of people. And is it quantified? No. But if John had the same experience, and if Steve had the same experience, I would put that in the category of many, which is more than 10. So, I mean, we could try to quantify it, we could come up with a percentage, we could do all that, but I do, you know, it gets the point across that people want a say, and they would have preferred it, because there wasn't a big difference in this, whether it was elected or not.
The point is across even if you remove those two paragraphs. You are still getting the same results. And, you know, I get that you don't care whether I necessarily vote yay or nay on this, but I do believe it reads very differently. And
but it's the same point.
You know how people feel. I, as a nurse, never assume how somebody feels. It is a very, very
But if the people tell you exactly
when
how
you
they
ask-
feel, why can't we report that?
Yeah,
So-
if you ask them and they tell you, you believe them,
So first of
right?
all, feelings are happy, sad, so they didn't feel. So I guess they felt that it was unfair. Like, this isn't a feeling, okay? So even
All
that
right,
word is not
let's change
used
felt to
correctly.
stated.
Stated. Okay.
Good idea.
And you have a second?
And you can change many residents to
Some residents?
some residents.
Okay. That's reasonable.
That waters it down a little.
That's all right.
It has been confirmed.
Still gets on the ballot. That's the goal
that
here.
there
The next
are
one is-
no financial.
Hours of service or performance advantages. This one is absolutely factual.
It's documentable.
Yeah. So, whereas many residents of the town of Unionville stated that the decision, you want to say,
I will say, if it is, yes,
Some.
a
Whereas
tax
some.
collector could be told to work full-time, but an elected official tax collector could not be told
that's
to
not
work
what the
full-time.
resolution's about.
No, I understand that, and we're less than 5,000. The point was, when Michelle was assuming that responsibility, Michelle was going to have her responsibilities plus that of the tax collector. That was the assumption of who was taking that over. Somebody we already knew all the properties very, very well, and is meticulous. And unfortunately, we did lose her because she needed full-time hours.
She didn't take it over last December when this was.
It was as of January. It was as of January 1st. But
I know,
you
remember we were allowed to
appointed
pay property taxes
somebody else.
early, and so the person had to step up early. and
But
then
it had to be Edna, because it had to be, Edna wasn't retiring till the end of the year.
Right.
It had to be Edna.
She just
So
didn't do
we
it.
were just graced enough that Edna
Right.
agreed to come back, even though
She
officially.
wasn't here, Karina.
What part of this discussion
Yeah.
has anything to do with the resolution?
So the hours of service can be changed if you have a staff member versus an elected official. As Betsy states it, that's true 3 days a week. Let's say our tax collector was doing this, but it was another employee like Joan Miller, who is also the zoning, planning secretary, who's doing more. So we would
I
assign.
think the point here is because
20
it's-
hours here, 20 hours here.
I think the point here is, we can confirm there's no financial advantage. The hours of service, there's no advantage for hours of service. They're required to work 3 days a week. We added the Saturday as a courtesy to the residents. It actually worked. That tax collector would have to work that Saturday if the town board said that the hours were going to be on Saturday. But they are required to work 3 days a week. And you know what we found is that she actually could have gotten it done in those 3 days a week. We just were trying to go the extra mile for the residents. So the hours of service were not a problem. That was one of the reasons that people mentioned last year. They were saying that, well, you can't force these people to do stuff. Well, actually, the town board can set the hours. They can. And the performance advantage, there is no performance advantage at all if you have the right people in the jobs. So my suggestion is, we have a motion, we have a second.
Seconded.
Let's call this to vote. Can you give us a roll call vote, please, Andrea?
Supervisor Motz?
Aye.
Councilman Frazier?
Aye.
Councilman McMorris?
Aye.
Councilwoman Kelly?
No.
Councilman Welsh?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Resolution 1819 passes. 1820 on the escrow fee, Councilman Frazier, I'm going around the table. Would you mind reading that?
Sure. Purpose of this resolution is to clarify a sentence in the escrow fee schedule. Whereas the town board of the town of Unionville approved the master fee schedule, including an escrow fee schedule in April 2018, and whereas there may be an ambiguity with the following sentence, and removal of any ambiguity is helpful to our residents, applicants, and consultants. As escrow funds are depleted down to 20% of your initial deposit, you will be asked to replenish your escrow account before being placed on the calendar for the next board meeting. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the town board of the town of Unionville approves the clarification and update to the following sentence within the escrow fee policy, which will read as follows. As escrow funds are depleted down to 20% in your initial deposit, You will be asked to replenish your escrow account back to its initial deposit amount and will not be placed on the calendar for the next meeting unless the account is fully replenished. The question of the adoption going forward is put to a vote.
All right, there's a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, John. Can you give us is there any discussion? I'm sorry. Anybody want to discuss that?
I just want to say, I trust our zoning board is on board with this, and they're okay with it?
Yes, a couple of things came up where people were not quite understanding. Is it the 20% of your initial deposit, how much does that mean I have to put back? We asked a lot of people in town hall, and they all said, we have to replace what you started with. But if it was unclear, and a couple of, I know that our chair of the zoning board called me and said she felt like it was unclear for some people. So the idea is that you have to replenish back to your initial amount, and you can't be put on the calendar unless you do so. That way the town's funds, taxpayers' money is not at risk. So, does that sound to you, does it sound like it makes sense? Okay. So yeah, they like this clarification. They have some other changes they may want to look at later.
Make life easier for them.
Yeah. And for John, who, tracks it.
Sure.
Any other discussion? Do you have a question?
No.
You're good? Okay. Roll call vote, please, Andrea?
Supervisor Moss?
Aye.
Councilman Frazier?
Aye.
Councilman McMorris?
Aye.
Councilwoman Kelly?
Yes.
Councilman Welsh?
Aye.
All right, Councilman, thank you. That motion carries. Resolution 1820 for the escrow fee schedule update. 1821, Councilwoman Kelly, do you mind reading that?
Okay, the purpose of this resolution is to reduce the number of members of the Board of Assessment Review, BAR, for reasons of efficiency and expediency.
Yeah. Sorry.
I was like, expeditious, no, that's not. Whereas each local government in the state of New York is required to have a Board of Assessment Review whose members should have knowledge of the property values within the local government. And whereas the Board of Assessment Review shall consist of not less than 3, no more than 5 members appointed by the legislative body of the local government of the town of Unionville, or the town board of the town of Unionville, and whereas the terms of office of members of the Board of Assessment Review shall be 5 years and shall commence on the 1st day of October and terminate on the 13th day of September, 5 years thereafter. And whereas 5 members of the the Unionville Board of Assessment Review is excessive and redundant given the number of grievances brought forth in the town of Unionville. Therefore, be it resolved that the town board of the town of Unionville approves the reduction of Board of Assessment Review members from 5 down to 3. This reduction will be implemented by a simple method of attrition whereby the next 2 members whose terms expire will not be replaced or reappointed.
Thank you.
A second.
Second, any discussion?
How are you going to figure out,
The attrition?
well, I'm just thinking, should it be after this attrition that it's a 3-year term?
Yeah, I was confused about that too.
Oh, the
It's
term,
still
I
a
believe,
5-year.
it has to stay 5, because that's what the
Oh.
code, that's what the state law says.
Oh.
You can have 3 or 5 people, 3, 4, or 5, but,
Okay.
but
That
the
was
term
just
stays
my-
the same. Yeah,
that
good
was just
point,
my-
good catch. No, that term will stay the same, and in the end of September 30th, somebody will, whoever's next up, I believe we have a list in the office, that person will fall off, and then a year from now, the next person, then we'll be down to 3, and Mr. Taft feels like that'll be easier to manage, and any other questions?
We will see.
Yeah. Okay, how about a roll call vote, please?
Did we get a second?
No.
Oh, I thought.
I did.
Yeah.
Oh, you
Oh,
did?
you did.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I missed it.
Okay, Supervisor Moss?
Aye.
Councilman Frazier?
Aye.
Councilman McMorris?
Aye.
Councilwoman Kelly?
Yep.
Councilman Welsh?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Resolution 1821 passes. At this point, I'd like to have somebody make a motion to approve. Well, I can make a
So
motion.
moved.
Oh, thank you. To also transfer the funds. I want to get approval for the transfer we made from the escrow account to the
The
general
electronic
fund.
transfer.
Electronic transfer.
Yeah.
Second? Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, any opposed? No. We will pay the bills, motion carries. Lastly, any public comments on town issues? We had somebody that was interested.
I wanted to talk a little about the library situation because It's been near and dear to my heart since my child was very little, and now he's very tall. And I wanted to say that I really appreciate the due diligence you're putting in about the contract. I believe that understanding how the library spends its money, how it bills us, is a very good thing because of that old saying, taxation without representation. I know we are not the only town struggling with this. Even the town of Clinton is going over things about the tax override like we are, and I believe that anybody paying taxes should have a say to make sure that the library services are financially as secure as our towns are. And you wouldn't want the town to spend money needlessly or unfairly compared to other towns. And that's why I believe you're doing the right thing, and that there's a lot more information out there about what's going on in other towns that border us, like town of Clinton, Stanford, Dover, Amenia. Amenia has the tiniest library you have ever seen. I think it's as big as this room. And they're very happy with it. And even, I don't remember if it's Stanford or Clinton, their circulation usage has gone from like 1,500 up to 14,000. And they have about 4,130 some odd residents, which is similar to our numbers. But they do have a little library, but their costs were only from the town 54,800. So I believe that due diligence is worthwhile, and that we should be able to have a say about how these taxes are used with the library. Because you know what? I don't want to know that it costs $6.50 to take out Winnie the Pooh. And frankly, that's what it costs in one of the libraries we used when my son was little. And that was 6 years ago, and they went up 84%. And I'm really concerned about the fiscal responsibilities, and that as taxpayers, we should be responsible to help protect our children and how we use that money. So I know it's hard for everybody, but we're not the only ones going through it. And I hope that the people who came and spoke last month understand it that way, because they didn't seem to. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else have any comments about town issues? No?
Richie's not here again, and
Do you have any comments?
Chunk of Tree was down for 3 days. It's finally the third day. Thank you, town board lady, town hall lady.
What was
clerk
down?
lady.
What happened?
What was down?
A big chunk of tree came down toward the Brussels Road end of my little private road.
Did you call? Did you call?
I didn't call Richie, I was on the road, so I used my no-use cell phone and called the ladies in town hall. They passed it along, finally on the third day. Too big for me to move, I'll take it.
Yeah, well, they've been inundated with trees,
Yeah.
county and the town, guys.
And
So much-
actually, it's probably a town tree, now that I think about it. It's close enough to, I don't know, what's the distance from the middle of the road? How far side?
25 feet.
How many?
25 feet.
I'll go measure one of these days. 20.
Well, the Bonks, you know, the Bonks had that tree out there for a week.
Yeah, you know why it wasn't moved? Because Verizon wouldn't come and move their
And move
lines.
the lines. I mean,
County
it's-
can't touch it when there's wires on it.
It's
I don't
been
blame them.
complicated, I know.
But as soon as the wires were gone, the county came right out and
They
took care of
came.
it. So
They're all working hard, I think.
they are. They're very busy.
Make a
All right,
motion,
have a
we adjourn?
I
I'm sorry.
just have one comment and one question. Comment, when you were talking about that thing you went to with all the letters, the former CAC is a great group to talk to, because I think it was Lolita that told me. At one point, they had mapped out areas in the town where you could walk in all the green space.
That's true. Yeah.
And so I don't think it ever got like put together and published anywhere, but they were already on that.
That's a great.
So definitely we need to
for
touch base
exercise
with
and
them, and so people know where there are like accessible little
Okay, that's a
cut
great idea.
throughs and things like that. And then, just my question, was it like at the work session, you told us that Ted Eglett was done? I didn't get those audit reports yet. Is he done?
No,
The audit, no.
not
He's
completely,
not
right?
completed, he's,
Oh.
he's still in the middle
Maybe
of
you
the
said
big
nearing
audit. We're all,
Okay.
we're all stumbling tonight. The big
It's
audit.
late.
Um,
I must have misunderstood.
No, but I'm,
Or
yeah.
is nearing or something you
It's
said.
gotta
He's
be
still got
said.
a
I
few
wanted to
more
make sure I
things.
didn't miss
He got
something.
Just sent him a bunch
the
more
lion's share
stuff.
of it, but he didn't do
Yeah,
everything.
he got another box of vouchers and things like ad hoc things that he wanted to, just to do his due diligence and to check, like a comptroller's office auditor would do. He
Yeah.
asked for all kinds of things, and that box went out to him, so we're not quite ready, but we're getting.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And he is gonna write a management letter, and he is gonna, so we will, I think it should be emailable as well as hard copy.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, my days are just flying, and I wanted to make sure
No,
I didn't
that's a
miss
good point. I'm
something.
gonna follow up on that to find out timing. All right, thank you very much. Motion to adjourn.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you all very much.
Did you just say no?
I said no. Just curious if anybody's paying
He's
attention.
staying. Thank you all. Have a good night.